Hi everybody, welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. In this video, we're going to talk about this Jewish man, his name is Adam, who says that he has ashes from the red heifer. You remember that I did that video recently, well, not too recently, but several weeks ago, where it turns out that the Temple Institute did a practice ceremony where they actually burnt a red heifer. And this man, Adam, says that that was actually the real thing. So we're going to be looking at the implications of that. I also have a few questions about it, but if it's true, if they successfully got the ashes of a kosher red heifer, then that's really big news in Judaism. And potentially for us, not doctrinally. This has nothing to do with our church doctrinally. But if they are excited about this, especially those that are awaiting Messiah, like I've said a million times before, I'm interested in them being excited and being prepared for Messiah, because we know that when Christ comes to the Mount of Olives, they're going to recognize him this time and they're going to accept him as Messiah. So I think the Lord works with different peoples in different ways, especially the Jews, because they have a big part to play at the time of the second coming and probably into the millennium. So we'll talk about that in just a second. I have a little bit of housekeeping and some news. Okay, so I did more research on the city of Seth. I recently did a video about this, and I went to the approximate location of where it would have been located. Based on a book called Sacred Places, Missouri by Barrett. So I went and tracked that down, and I found more sources and found out, I found the document, or at least one document, where we know that it was supposed to be called the city of Seth. I talk about that in this video and read from the references that I found. So make sure to check that out. And additionally, make sure to subscribe to my channel, Explore Church Sites. I've put together a spreadsheet, a separate spreadsheet for that channel. I also have a link for it in the description box of this channel too. But I have this spreadsheet of all the church sites that I've been to. It's not complete. There's still more that I need to add to this, and I plan on going to as many as I possibly can. But I have the locations. They're all broken up by state and by county. And the ones in yellow are the must-see church sites when you come to Missouri, Illinois, Nebraska, whatever. But this is an ongoing project, but you can use this as a resource. If you're coming this way, then please take a look at this and see everything that there is to see here, time permitting. And I also have a map. I didn't know that you could do this, but Google Earth now allows you to create your own maps and share them the same way that I share the spreadsheets. This is Adam on Diamond. I have a lot of work to do, but there's all these markers that a lot of people don't know about that you can go and track down. So I'm going to hunt those down and put them on the map. So, but not just for, sites at Adam on Diamond, but just everywhere that I can possibly go. I'm also working on the Missouri Mormon walking trail in Independence. There's 14 markers that are scattered throughout the city. And I don't have them all on here yet, but I will soon. So it's always so unfortunate. People come here, they go to the visitor center, they may walk over to the temple lot, maybe Community of Christ temple, and then they leave and they don't see everything that there is to see here. There's much more. So please use this as a resource when you come and visit, or if you live around here and you didn't know about all these sites. Here's Richmond. A lot of times people go to the two cemeteries, but they don't know that there are other things to see in downtown Richmond. Okay, so this came on my radar from an email that I got from Michael McMurray. Red Heifer sacrifice has been done. Hi, Jared. Greetings from Salt Lake City. You're going to be very excited to hear that the Red Heifer sacrifice has been done. Don't fall off your chair. I saw your podcast with your friend in Israel where he talked about doing a quote unquote practice sacrifice before doing the actual red heifer sacrifice. Well, as it turns out, the practice sacrifice was indeed the actual sacrifice. I heard it this morning as I was getting ready to attend the temple this morning on Tim Pool IRL's podcast from last night. His guest, Adam King, broke the news. You'll find it at the 1 hour, 14 minute, 57 mark, or last news story before going to Super Chats. Adam also provides a short clip that they played in of the sacrifice. See Adam's contact info below, as well as the link to the Tim Pool podcast. And then here's the link and the how to track down Adam. I know this just blew your mind. It'll be interesting on what your friend in Israel has to say. Looking forward to your podcast updating everyone. And then normally I would read the whole email, but I want to keep this short. You can pause and read this really neat story, this experience that Michael had that had to do with the downtown Salt Lake tornado of 1999. So pause and read that really quick if you'd like. Okay, so let's get into what's going on here. First of all, I have this spreadsheet. This is called Judaism Temple Preparation. There have been a lot of things that the Temple Institute and other groups have been doing to try and make the third temple a reality. And I want to keep track of this because of the implications. I don't know exactly how prophecy is going to play out. Okay. But I think it's wise to keep an eye on what they're doing and how they're preparing for the third temple, for Messiah, because I think really it's the Lord preparing them for the millennium, right? So recently I've added a new column I for Red Heifer, just to more easily sort out the items that I have on here that have to do with the Red Heifer. The most recent one is from sometime in July when you had this, what they were saying was a practice for the actual ceremony. I did a video about it. Here's the 7 Israel National News story that has a clip, just like a 5-second clip of the practice ceremony, or what was supposedly a practice ceremony, right? So that blew my mind because I almost didn't think that they were even going to get to that point, or that it'd be sometime just down the road. But no, here it is right here. Now, the person that's saying that was actually the real thing is Adam King. I've never heard of him before. He's Jewish. At the beginning of the podcast, they do the introduction. He's the guest for that episode. I'm not going to read this right here, but he's involved with this right here, where my cursor is at. And then I tracked down, his social media accounts, or at least a couple of them. He has this X account, has 3,980 followers, which isn't a ton. And I'm not saying that like against him, but it's not a whole lot in terms of social media. And then on Instagram, he has 354. So I don't take it that he's like a really big figure or anything like that. That's just something to take note of. And his most recent post is from his interview on this podcast and him holding the little baggie with ashes from the Red Heifer. He also has a website and a more just like traditional podcast. I guess there's one where there's video and then another where there's just audio. And you have all the links and stuff like that. So that's what I know about him. And that's not to discredit anything that he said. It's just that I don't know him. This is the first time I've ever heard about him. It doesn't seem that he's like, beyond just doing social media, that he's like a public figure or someone related to or that works for or in the Temple Institute. So I'm taking note of that. Now, I have my friend Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz. He lives in Israel. He works for Israel 365 News. I've known him for a few years now. I think ever since the first year that I started my channel. And Adam has been a really good resource for what's going on in Israel. because on Israel 365 News, he does a bunch of articles that have to do with prophecy and what you and I would typically consider signs of the times, but signs of the times that are happening specifically in Israel that he's able to witness and document. He's like my counterpart, my Israeli Jewish counterpart. And so we have a really good friendship. I think in this video, we talked about the term that he was using, signposts, that there's just been all these signs as he and other Jews are expecting Messiah to appear shortly. Now, Adam knows the people from the Temple Institute. This is Rabbi Azariah Ariel. He's the head of the research department at the Temple Institute. And so I trust what Adam says about the Red Heifers because he's in contact with the Temple Institute. So again, here's me and Adam. Here's Adam and the head of research of the Temple Institute. So I think it's I got a pretty good connection there. Now, during the podcast, like he said, toward the end of the podcast, they start talking more about the Red Heifer, and there was a slideshow of pictures that Adam King had of the ceremony. And one thing that stuck out is the location. Okay, so we already kind of see that from this video. Pay attention to the mountains back here. You see how it's like all green and stuff like that. You don't see any buildings. Well, that's kind of a problem if this was the actual thing. Because in order to fulfill Jewish law, halakha, it's supposed to be done within sight of the temple. Now, from everything that I've heard, the temple doesn't actually have to be constructed for this to happen, but you still have to be on the Mount of Olives at a place where the priests can look directly, have a clear line of sight into the Holy of Holies over here. So you had this bridge at one time, and on this side of the bridge, on the Mount of Olives, this is where it was performed. It has to happen in a specific location. They talk about it down here. They say a lot about it here, but I'm just going to read this part. The priest stands atop the altar and slaughters the heifer. He uses his right hand for the act, then gathers the blood, not in a vessel, but in his left hand. With his right index finger, he sprinkles from it 7 times, standing opposite the entrance to the Holy Temple, facing that direction all the while and looking towards the entrance. Actually, it's talking about when he's on the Mount of Olives. Anyway, they have to be on the Mount of Olives and have that clear line of sight into the Holy of Holies. Here's another just kind of depiction. So pay attention to the Mount of Olives. You see how it has all these buildings right here. There's also a large, like a cemetery. But on both sides here in this picture, you can see that there's just like all these buildings. And you do see some trees and stuff like that. But this is what you would expect it to look like because that's where it has to happen, right? So again, when we look at these pictures, there's a whole lot of green all around here. From the pictures that are provided in the podcast, I don't know. I mean, maybe there is a place on the Mount of Olives that that looks like this that I'm not aware of. I've never been there myself, but I'm going to have to say it doesn't really look like it's the Mount of Olives. So here's another thing that we can look at. This is 360cities.net, and we've looked at this a number of times. This picture was taken from the Golden Gate, and if this wasn't sealed and the temple was around today, this is what the priest would be looking through to look toward the Holy of Holies, the entrance of the temple. So as we look across the Kidron Valley over there, I mean, you tell me, does this right here, does this look like that? Does it look like that? in my opinion, it doesn't look like it. So I don't know. Did they have another practice where they actually did it from here? You know, well, again, but no, because the pictures that he's providing it's clearly from this story right here. And these are the pictures from what he's talking about. So for those reasons, unfortunately, I can't get too excited yet. I'm not calling him a liar. In fact, during the podcast, I felt like he was very well spoken. He knew what he was talking about. He sounded credible. But even so, like I don't know him. I don't know. It's kind of interesting because these other guys on the podcast, they were really good too, but it got a little bit uncomfortable as they were talking about the differences between Judaism and Christianity. But there was one part that I enjoyed where they were talking about Christ coming to the Mount of Olives, right? Because the Jews expect him, or they expect Messiah to come to the Mount of Olives. And they were having this kind of discussion and debate about the function of the temple, like why would the temple be coming back? Now, in Christianity, as far as I can tell, I've never been anything but a member of this church. But in the rest of Christianity, it seems like the only purpose that I've heard comes from those who believe that there's a one-person Antichrist, because they look at the scriptures that we interpret as scriptures having to do with the great apostasy, and since they don't have that concept in Christianity, they're like, oh no, there wasn't a great apostasy, everything's fine. We've had to make some adjustments. But they don't have the same concept that we do of a great apostasy that necessitates the restoration of the church. So when they read those scriptures that are talking about Satan and how Satan was able to mess things up, change the times and the seasons and all that stuff, the ordinances, they come to the conclusion that there's supposed to be an antichrist that's literally supposed to be in the temple. And so they think, oh yeah, well, okay. So I guess the Jews are going to build a temple again, and then the Antichrist is going to be there. And that's what those scriptures are talking about. And that's how prophecy is going to be fulfilled. So as far as I can tell, that's the only reason why they would care about a temple being reconstructed. But that generally that there's not a reason for a temple anymore because Christ was the great sacrifice. So, but the thing about it is that as they were talking, Adam was like, well, we both agree that Messiah, Jesus Christ, is going to come to Israel, right? So what's the function of that? What's the function of Jerusalem? And these guys didn't have like an answer. They were just like, well, yeah, it's important, but I don't know. And of course, in our church, we know why. Because in our doctrine, this is going to be one of two world capitals, one of two Jerusalems. You have this old Jerusalem, but then you have the new Jerusalem that's going to be over here in Missouri, the site of the Garden of Eden, right? Right here. Let's zoom in. Right here. He's going to be reigning and ruling from Old Jerusalem as well as right here in the New Jerusalem. And that's what the millennium is going to be like. So the Lord has not forgotten the Jews. It is important that they still have their lineage. We've talked about this many times on our channel. We have that part of the house of Israel, Judah and Benjamin and Levi, that are generally those three tribes that are collectively known as the Jews. And then you have the rest of Israel that's been scattered, that are now being gathered in. And we're all going to come together in the millennium. And the coming together of these two parts of Israel essentially is going to happen when Christ comes to the Mount of Olives, when he appears to the Jews as part of his second coming. So anyway, I felt like he was a really good, I felt like he was a really good guest. He had a lot of good things to say. I would encourage you to check it out. Let's go back to the email again. It's at the 1 hour, 14 minute and 57 second mark if you want to watch it. Now, if he's right, and if these are kosher ashes from the red heifer, that's going to be big in Judaism, because it's hard to obtain a red heifer, one that's ritually pure. And with the ashes of the red heifer, you are now able to ceremonially purify all Jews so that they can ascend to the Temple Mount. Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz has told me that there are certain sacrifices that can be done in Judaism where you don't have to be ritually pure, but there are many others that are performed in the temple where you do have to be ritually pure, and you have to have the ashes of the red heifer. So this was one of the things that was like, this was one of the obstacles to overcome toward making the third temple a reality. But if this is true, that is no longer an obstacle. So you see, you understand the implications here. And from what I've seen, and not just, I'm not just like going by memory here, from everything that I've recorded on my spreadsheets. I have this spreadsheet. I also have another one called Signs, Jewish Specific. Between these two spreadsheets, there has been a lot of activity and a lot of excitement within Judaism. And I'm not saying Judaism as a whole, because you have some that they don't believe that there's going to be a third temple, like the, what are they called? The Reform Jews, and even conservative Jews. I interviewed one of them one time, Rabbi Pepperstone from Wichita, and he wasn't expecting there to be a temple, but there is a portion of them that fully expect for these things to happen. And among that group, I've noticed a lot of excitement. I would say it's almost at fever pitch. So imagine what they're thinking. For anyone that may be aware of this, and if this is true, think about what they may be thinking and experiencing at this point. So anyway, so since I can't really at this time, I can't really verify it. I'm just going off of his word. I'm not going to be able to put it on my spreadsheet. Okay. I'm not going to be able to do it. If I get more sure word later on, I'll let you know. I sent an email to Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz, and we'll see what he says. Although, if it was real, he may not confirm it, because they may want to keep it on the down low, So we'll just see. We'll see what happens. But thanks for the email, Michael. That's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and also make sure to subscribe to Explore Church Sites, and I'll talk to you guys later.